Googie architecture in Reno. Yes, we've got some, plus several other examples of mid-century modern architecture that you may or may not be aware of. Nevada has a rich history of tearing buildings down and rebuilding, and also a great many buildings in this style across the country are no longer with us. So it's kind of cool that the buildings you're about to see are still around. Mid-century modern was a design style that came of age in the 1950s and 1960s that had a dusting of whimsy and never really took itself too seriously. These futuristic and angular designs are much revered by a subset of fans of architecture, myself included. So please join me as we discover mid-century modern Reno. Okay, so for the uninitiated, what are we really talking about here, this mysterious mid-century modern architecture and Googie architecture? In post-World War II America, particularly in the 1950s, this country was rebounding, prospering, and really shaking the dust off the frugality that was endured in the 1940s. The public at the time was also becoming enthralled with things like space flight and nuclear power, and this energy was incorporated into this new design philosophy. Also at this time, the American car culture was in full swing, and buildings were designed to be eye-catching and serve as advertising in and of themselves, which, if you think about it, is the polar opposite of what commercial buildings do today. Buildings today seem to be mostly designed to just blend in. I'll serve you up any mini mall as an example. Some of the motifs used in these designs were boomerangs, atoms, flying saucers, parabolas, and parallelograms. This space-age approach is what set this movement apart and makes it noteworthy, and also explains why it eventually fell out of favor. This then modern design style was never fully accepted by the architectural community. It was considered a little too loud and flashy. The term Googie, which is actually a part of the mid-century modern movement, came from a structurally quirky coffee shop built in Los Angeles called Googie's Coffee Shop, with Googie having been the nickname of the wife of the building's original owner. So in a nutshell, the goal of the mid-century modern aesthetic was to incorporate a then modern concept into architecture, sometimes just called modernist architecture. So let's see what's left of this in the Reno area. I've been saving my favorite for last, so please stick around until the end. And also please consider subscribing so you'll know when we upload new content that you might like to see. And if you'd be so kind as to smash that little like button, golly, that would be swell. If you're new to Reno, or even if you've been here a while, you should be familiar with the Fman Planetarium. This crazy cool building was built and opened in 1963, and it was funded by the Max Fleischmann Foundation. You might recognize the name Fleischmann from his yeast and gin empires. Max Fleischmann moved to Nevada in 1935, and he passed away in 1951. This facility originally opened as the Fleischmann Atmospherium Planetarium, but today it's known just as the Fleischmann Planetarium. It was the first of its kind in the world and featured the first 360-degree projector that could show horizon-to-horizon images and display an entire day's weather in just a few minutes. This is an excellent example of the Populuxe style, a subset of mid-century modern, which is a term that was assembled from the words popular and luxury. This one-of-a-kind building was designed by Reno architect Raymond Hellman, and the technical term for the shape of this building is hyperbolic paraboloid. Try saying that 3 times fast. The floor-to-ceiling windows are hallmarks of mid-century modern buildings. It's hard to see the building's profile today because the trees have grown up so much, but here's a vintage image showing the groovy shape. Unbelievably, in 2002, the university was serious about tearing down this amazing structure for, you guessed it, a parking lot. They said the operation wasn't profitable. Well, of course it's not profitable. It's a planetarium. It's not a Saks Fifth Avenue. Anyway, a number of people in the community raised enough hell that the university went back to the drawing board and reconfigured their plans, and the parking structure that you see here today is the result. This is High Sierra Lanes on South Virginia Street near the corner of Moana, and this facility has been serving the community for over 60 years. This mid-century modern building was constructed in the late 1950s, originally as a store, and then at some point it converted to a bowling alley and was known until the 1990s as Town and Country Bowl. In the late 1950s, this would have been the very southern edge of town, and Moana Lane was probably still a dirt road at that point. Of particular note for this building are the accordion-style exterior wall, and of course these otherworldly structures that look like they were surplus out of an old Star Trek episode. I'm not sure their intended purpose, but they sure look cool. I might have to install a couple of these in my backyard. I'm just saying. This is the El Rancho number 2, located on 4th Street near downtown Reno. And this is a classic example of the kind of motel that catered to the tourist trade in the 1950s. This was built in 1954 by Pete Cladianos Sr., who already owned another El Rancho motel south of town on South Virginia Street. This motel is in a large L shape, and it still sports a red tile roof, which is probably original and is a nod to the southwestern theme of the building. Back in the day, 4th Street was the main thoroughfare in and out of town, Old Highway 40 or the Lincoln Highway, and this lot was perfectly situated right on the highway, and it became available after a meatpacking plant had burned down. A meatpacking plant burned down. Do you suppose that event made the whole neighborhood smell like barbecue? Our main interest for this episode, however, is what came later. The owners wanted to offer a restaurant, a motel lobby, a pool, and a cocktail lounge. So in 1961, they opened this, a Dennys in the then popular Googie style. This is one of the earliest locations of the Dennys chain. Here's a postcard of the motel before the new building went up. This Dennys was designed by the architectural firm of Armit and Davis in Los Angeles, and this is the firm that was most closely associated to this style of architecture. There's actually a subgenre of architecture called coffee shop modern, and Armit and Davis popularized the style with many commissions in Southern California. This building is notable for the funky angles of the buttresses here and the general unsquareness of the whole affair. One of Reno's best ghost pools is located right alongside. I made a video featuring Reno's ghost pools several years ago, many of which have since been demolished. I'll leave a link to that in the description. The cocktail lounge had a separate entrance around back, and I think the name of it was the Brickyard or something like that. This whole area of 4th Street fell on hard times after Interstate 80 opened in the 1970s and diverted most of the traffic off of Old Highway 40. Today, the El Rancho offers weekly and monthly stays, and the Dennys has long since closed. As of the date of this filming, Reno is experiencing a sort of clear-cutting of old motels like this on the west side of town, and I'm just hopeful that this old building can be preserved because it's such a classic slice of 1950s Americana. So before I left this filming location, I thought I'd give something a try. I knocked on the door of the building that used to be the old Dennys and found the lady inside, and I said, "Hey, you know, this used to be a Dennys built in 1961. She says, "Oh, sure." And I said, is there any evidence of it being a Dennys? Are there any counters or tables or whatnot inside? And she says, "Oh no, we just use it for storage." And I said, "Could I see it anyway?" And she said, "Sure." So she opened the door and locked it, and this is what I saw.
I think they said this was the bar area. That was the kitchen.
Oh, look at the roof. It's that funky
Yes.
angle. Oh my gosh.
And I believe that was a dining room, and the next room was a dining room, but this was the kitchen area.
Okay, for the restaurant.
Yes.
Did they have like a pass-through window where they pass the plates through
Well,
and
there
such?
might have been at one time, but I don't know. I think they must have had doors here
Yeah.
and came through here.
Well, look at the Denny's shape of the Oh, you can totally tell. Look at that. Yeah, this was built in 1961.
Yes.
Yeah, wow. The angles. And the old stonework.
Yeah.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, it totally still looks like a Dennys as far as the structure of it. Oh my gosh. Yeah, and this does look like a bar. The wood paneling.
I bet it was cool back in the day.
Oh, heck yeah. Nice. Well, I sure appreciate you showing me.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Oh, and that was the door to the
Yep.
the door to the pool right there.
Sure was.
So you can come in and get your cocktail
Yep.
and then go on back out. Well, that's why Frank Sinatra was here, right?
Yes.
Heck yeah.
And Martin and
Oh my gosh. The decision to put a huge gold geodesic dome in the center of Reno was a bold move for this little town in the mid-1960s. At the time, Reno was seeing Las Vegas becoming a larger player in the Nevada market, but Reno's population was booming, and many communities at the time were investing in facilities for the performing arts. This is the Pioneer Center for the Performing Arts. It opened in 1967. And this is just a glorious example of the Populuxe style. The geodesic dome in architecture was dreamed up by architect, inventor, and futurist Buckminster Fuller. And this one was designed by an architectural firm in Oklahoma City, and it's comprised of 500 panels of gold anodized aluminum. There's a separate steel dome on the interior that supports the interior functions. I just love the lines here, the sweeping arches that almost touch the ground at the very front. Locals have lovingly referred to this building as the Golden Turtle, and it remains a first-class venue for music and Broadway productions that pass through town. This building is perhaps the most humble offering of this episode. This vacant little structure on Keystone Avenue used to house the first Orange Julius stand in Reno. You remember Orange Julius? I think they're still around in shopping malls, and the Dairy Queen people own them now. The architects here were again Armit and Davis of Los Angeles, and the roof is a folded motif that is a classic Googie expression. This was constructed in 1966 and would have had wraparound windows. A pretty cool feature of this building is that the frame of the original sign is still in place from 1966. While I couldn't dig up a photo of the stand or the sign from back in the day, I did find this photo of an old Orange Julius building from 1964 in Los Angeles, and you can see that the sign structure is the same as the Reno sign. The LA building was torn down several years ago. Hopefully Reno's example will endure. This is one of the coolest mid-century modern buildings in the city of Reno, and overall just one of the most remarkable buildings in town. This is the Washoe County Library at the corner of Center and Liberty. If you've never been in here, or it's been a minute since you have, come on down and just marvel at the mid-century greatness that is this design. This 43,000 square foot structure is built around an interior garden with hundreds of trees and plants and shrubs. And the architect was named Hewitt C. Wells of the Reno firm DeLongchamp, O'Brien and Wells. This imaginative structure really is a work of art, and I love these giant mushrooms that kind of resemble flying saucers and the walkways through lush vegetation. Wells was presented with a national award for his work here, the Industrial Landscape Award from the National Association of Nurserymen. The Washoe County Library was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 2013. Hewitt C. Wells also designed this small office building at 601 West 1st Street, which today houses Label's Consignment Boutique. This building was built in 1964 and has a very linear modernist motif. Incidentally, Hewitt Wells also designed the building on Center Street that used to house the Reno City Hall and today serves as the Terry Lee Wells Discovery Museum. This is the most recently constructed building on this tour, but it's noteworthy because of its salute to mid-century modern architecture. This is the Max Lounge on Plum Lane, and this was built 15 or 20 years ago or so, and it was patterned after the early McDonald's hamburger stands and really closely resembles the oldest continuously operating McDonald's, which is store number 3 in Downey, California. The upswept roof here is Googie all day long, as well as are some of the design elements on the building. All right, I've saved the best for last. This is, in my humble opinion, the finest remaining Googie structure in the Reno area. This is Jack's Cafe, located on Victorian Avenue in Sparks. And Victorian used to be Old Highway 40 back in the 1960s when this building was certainly constructed. And we're now filming today right next to I-80, so I apologize if there's highway noise. If you're in my age bracket and you look at this building, does it kind of ring a bell? Sambo's. That's right, this building started its life as a Sambo's chain restaurant, and the staff says that even for a minute it was a Pizza Hut before it ultimately became Jack's. The mid-century Googie architects took inspiration from Lloyd Wright in their designs, something which Mr. Wright would certainly not appreciate or own up to, but they did, and here's an example. This is a photo I took of Taliesin West, a Lloyd Wright compound in Scottsdale, Arizona. Notice the sloping roof, and then see it echoed here in this Armit and Davis commission. Incidentally, the In and Out arrow logo was introduced in 1954 and uses the same angle. Structurally, this building has the folded roof, the large front windows, and the rockwork at the entrance. On the interior, we can find more funky angles with the interior ceiling replicating the folded exterior roof, and is what is likely the original counter and interior seating. This building is just plain fun, and one of the reasons that I patronize the place.
And I'm not just a YouTube chronicler, I'm also a customer.
Other enduring reminders of mid-century modern in Reno are several period commercial signs, and the 4 that I'll share with you here are all boomerang signs. Each incorporates an atomic age boomerang into the design. These and others like them are an endangered species. These are relics of a bygone era that we'll never see the likes of again. These 4 signs are all clustered around downtown Reno, and these areas are all subject to redevelopment, so I'm crossing my fingers that these mid-century monuments will be preserved. My friend Will Durham is very active in the preservation of period neon signs. Maybe we'll get him to do a future episode. All right, I hope you've got a better handle on what mid-century modern and Googie architecture is or was. If you're in Reno, feel free to explore and find yourself other examples. There are more. And if you don't live in Reno, you can maybe use these examples to find this kind of thing in your own hometown. Today we're finishing up this episode at the Pinion Bottle Co, which is in midtown Reno. This opened several years ago, and they have 36 beers on tap and a whole wall, a cooler wall full of awesome cans and bottles, lots of selection down here. So a great place to have a beer in downtown or midtown Reno is the Pinion Bottle Company. And today I'm having a Sierra Nevada celebration. This is one of my favorite beers, if not my favorite beer of all time. Way back when, 30 plus years ago, I was into Pete's Wicked Ale. Do you remember Pete's Wicked Ale? Well, I thought that was the greatest thing since sliced bread, until I picked up a Sierra Nevada Celebration, and oh my gosh, this changed everything. It's not a traditional seasonal beer like you'll find out in the market. It's not spiced and all that. This is just a straight up perfect IPA, my favorite expression of it. So it ain't the holidays in the Ellison household until we bring home Celebration Ale. If you'd like to learn more about mid-century modern and Googie, I got a book for you. This is called, oddly enough, Googie by this author, Alan Hess. And I think he's got more books on close to this subject as well. But this one is on 1950s coffee shop architecture. So check this one out. All right. That's all I've got for you today. Thanks for joining us. And as Harold Smith Sr. of Harold's Club always said, I'm with you. Cheers.